So in that particular year of 2008, 2009, going back to the smaller home, only to find out, as I said before, that we were losing that home too. It's like, what do you do now? 3, go. You have reached the I'm Dealing With broadcast. I'm Sean, your host. Stay tuned as we go into the installment. What you've been waiting for. We're getting right in. Let's go now. Once again, I'm Sean, your host of the I'm Dealing With broadcast. Oh, you've listened to me talk about some of the installments leading up to where we are. This is season 3, The Release. Yes, it's entitled The Release. Why has it been called The Release? And I've led you up to this even since September, October, November last year, and December, letting you know that the new season of season 3 is going to be called The Release. Yeah, we have books, chapters, and verses in this season, but the reason why it's called The Release, because I've been told season 3 is the year and the time that I'm going to be released to talk about a few things. And you know what? Let's talk about those things. Well, in my previous installment, I've talked about pretty much where we are. I've talked about, if you've listened to it, and you need to listen to that one, the first installment. I was interviewed by Anna. Yeah, I was interviewed by Anna, and there were some very candid questions that needed to be addressed, that need to be answered. And I had to answer those from my heart, truthfully, my inadequacies, where I've been, what I've been feeling, my bad decisions. Well, let's talk about some of those bad decisions. Back in we're not going to go 20. Let's go back to 1900s. 1997. I was married. I was married in 1997. I met my wife in 96, right around November 96 or October 96. And from there, we had a relationship, and it led into marriage of July 5th, 1997. And out of that marriage, many people who don't know, we became one, but I brought one, she came with one. What am I saying? It was a blended family. She had a daughter, I had a son. And from the union came 2 more children. So we had a total of 4 children, basically in a year and a half after marriage, something along that line. So all of a sudden, next thing you know, you are a family of 4 children. And there were many ups and there were some downs. But all in all, it was good. We accomplished a lot of good things. We went from the apartment that I had alone to us being in it together for about a month or 2. And they were commuting, from the Los Angeles area, from San Diego to Los Angeles to work, sometimes not coming home during the week and staying away until coming home on the weekend, because it was beneficial for us during that time. And then later, again, after 2 months or so, we then moved into our place, and we stayed there for roughly 4 to 5 years. Come 2000, 2001, we had 1999, leading up to 2000, we had been driving, looking for places because we decided that we wanted to buy, not rent. There were plenty of opportunities that kind of opened up for us, one of which was in the San Diego area, down there in Chula Vista. Remember that place so vividly. It was a townhouse that we're going to buy. It was a nice townhouse. It would have been a good starter. However, but there were issues that we dealt with, because sometimes, you can be in the right place and at the right time, but God has other plans for you. And it's true that there were other plans for us. But even in the midst of those plans, we were disappointed based upon what we saw in front of us. Meaning, here's the right place, the right time, the right price. And the people who we were working with are dragging their feet. Meanwhile, we had already been traveling into up north, in the Temecula, Winchester area, looking for some other places, just looking around again, because we loved that out there. And next thing you know, an email was sent to us letting us know that a place was opening up that they were just building, but they were going to be selling. Wait a minute. What? Yes, I said that. They're building and they were going to be selling. So during that time, roughly in 2000, 2001 era, this is during the big housing market boom where if you were interested in housing, you pretty much had to sign up on a list. And this was during the time that there were fights that were breaking out. People were killed because people were waiting in line to buy. People were cutting in line and a whole lot of stuff. I mean, it was in the papers all over the place. Just about every city had to deal with that type of market. And for myself, dealing with that type of market, I had to figure out, well, if I was even interested, I'd have to get there early. So come to find out, they're going to be selling on a Saturday. So I was able to get reprieve from my job, and I left on Wednesday afternoon and showed up to the facility to say, hey, I'm here. Is there a list to put my name on? So that way I can be in the running to buy on Saturday. As God was saw fit, I opened the door, asked them that question, and then the ladies that were behind the door said, we're glad you're here because you happen to be the first one. Man, imagine that. I never thought that we would be number one on the list to buy. So sure enough, there were many people that came later that day, came Thursday, came Friday, and some had the audacity to show up on that Saturday to try to line up in front of the door. And it just so happened, come Saturday, when the agents got to the office to open up those doors, that they said, well, thank you for those of you that are lining up by the door. But however, we do have a list. And if your name is not on the list, then you will not be served today. And we're going to start with number one, the Bowden family. Right? Yes, we were the first on the list, the very first family to buy. Not only were we the first family to buy, we're the first house that moved in. We moved in a month earlier than all the other people that we spent the night with. Yes, I said it. From the time I got there on Wednesday to the time we bought on Saturday, I spent the night in my van in the parking lot to try to buy this home. And those are the rules. They asked us, they said, well, once you put your name on the list, you and whoever else can set whatever the rules were. So by the time the next group showed up on Wednesday, it was myself and he happened to be my next door neighbor. The rules were, if you showed up and put your name on the list, if you leave for any reason, you were scratched off and whoever is behind you moved up a notch. That's what it was. So there are ways to get around that, so if, your wife showed up, you went home to go shower, but somebody had to be in your spot. That's pretty much how it worked. And and it worked just like that. So my next door neighbors, they moved in a month after us. But yeah, so we're all alone on this block for a whole month. Oh, yes. And there were challenges. We moved in and everything. And come to find out, all we had was electricity. We had no gas because come to find out, the builder didn't even know that they didn't put the meters on the house when we moved in. So in all honesty, we shouldn't have even been in the house. We didn't even know that the meters weren't even on the house. We tried to figure out, why were we not getting any gas? Why is the burners not coming on and things of that sort? Why don't we have hot water? Yeah, it was a struggle. That first month was a struggle. So needless to say, it took roughly almost a week for us to finally get the meters on the house in order to get gas. So we finally moved in December. Matter of fact, it was right before Christmas. And it was a struggle because it was cold. I mean, it was cold and rainy. So we took everything from our storage and other garages that we were borrowing to move into our home, only to find out all we had was electricity. I mean, this is way before the whole Wi-Fi age per se. Your landlines, we had no landline. At that time, we didn't even have cell phones. Yeah. Imagine that. You not having a cell phone during that time. Yeah, there's no cell phones. Our landline hadn't been installed. Our internet provider, our cable / we were going to actually do satellite, DirecTV at that time. That wasn't installed. We were just happy to finally have a home for us. Again, we were glad to have a home for us. So even when we moved in, one of the things that we had to deal with, we had to deal with the cold. So what we decided to do is not even focus on staying. So we brought everything in, and then after that we left and we went back down south from where we came. And we decided to stay there overnight, knowing that in order to be where we were without heat, again, no gas, you have no heat, right? So there are things that we were going to need. We borrowed a crock pot. We borrowed 2 electric heaters, and then we figured it out. There's a lot of benefits that came along with the earlier struggle that many of us, we don't appreciate the struggle. We want the benefits, but we don't want to go through the struggle. And the thing about it is, in every aspect of our lives, there's a process to everything, to where we first have to go through a struggle period before we can appreciate the blessing, before we can actually receive the blessing. There is a struggle period. And if you're only focusing on the blessing, if you're only focusing on what to receive instead of going through the struggle, because the struggle is what is called the process. So in this process of time, we're going through a bunch of different things. We're going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And the Lord is continually blessing us as a family. Meanwhile, we were still traveling at that time to San Diego on weekends for our corporate church. So things are doing real well, and things are really happening for us on our jobs, and some different things just happen. We go from that to all of a sudden later on the door opens up to where we were able to get another home. So we go from one home, we purchase a larger home, but we kept our small home and decided to rent it out. And, it was a blessing. But at the same time, there are some things that happen later on to where, to make a long story short, not only did we later lose the larger houses during the housing crisis. First, it was the housing boom, but then you had the housing crisis. So not only did we lose the larger house, we decided to keep and hold on to our small house. So we left the larger, went back to our smaller, only to find out we were losing that one too. It was a struggle for me, because for me, I felt like everything that God had answered was in that first home. For many people, I understand investments and using that leverage, to generate your net worth and net base. For me, I wasn't thinking about net worth and net base. I was thinking about the blessing. So leaving the smaller to go to the larger wasn't because it was necessary. It was a want. And we have to be careful sometimes about our wants, because sometimes our wants come to haunt us. And as much as I liked the bigger home in one aspect, literally, let's just talk about the one aspect. The one aspect was there was a 19 feet wide by 37 foot long home theater that I built in the above the garage. Yeah, that's what I missed the most. Literally. 150-inch screen projector hanging from the ceiling, sound that made people jump up off the couch and all that. That was the thing I missed most about the house. Other than that, there were some great moments. We had great get-togethers, had some great relationships, met a lot of people. But ultimately, I always felt my blessing was in my smaller home. Honestly. So in that particular year of 2008, 2009, going back to the smaller home, only to find out, as I said before, that we were losing that home too. It's like, what do you do now? So we leave that place because knowing good and well we couldn't hold on to it. It had just gotten out of control. It was gotten out of control. I was very disappointed, despondent. And sometimes you go through a feeling of inadequacy, as I said. You go through the feeling of maybe not being enough. And anytime you lose things, sometimes you ask the question of why me, Lord? You do. Sometimes you ask that question, why me? And I'm sure God asked the question, well, why not you? Consider my servant Job, right? But anyway, I was asking really why? I don't get it. Why? And so we leave. And next thing you know, Lord opens the door, and now we go from homeowners owning one home, two home, to losing one home, living in one home, owning that one, and then also losing that one, to now we're no longer homeowners or property owners at all. And next thing you know, now we're renters. Yeah. And now you are trying to make a home out of something that doesn't belong to you. Yeah. It's tough when you deal with that side of things, because you're still trying to figure out how to make it work. But even in the midst of that, God had his hand in things on my job at the time, because this is also during the time in the very beginning of the housing boom, right around 2003, 2004. I started my own business where I was doing home theater. And even in that home theater market, again, I was considered a luxury business. So when the housing market crashes right around 2007, 8, 9, again, because you're a luxury business, that means people start killing their luxuries, meaning they don't spend so much on things. I mean, look at COVID-19. What has happened with COVID-19 now? There's a whole lot of people who haven't start spending a whole lot of money on stuff that were not necessities. And because I was a luxury business, it wasn't something that was a necessity. It was something that if somebody wanted to put a TV on the wall, it wasn't a necessity. It was because they wanted it. If they wanted home theater speakers in the ceiling, it was a want, not a necessity. If they wanted something put in their backyard, some type of theater space, maybe speakers in their bathroom, speakers in their bedroom, that wasn't a necessity. It's a luxury. So when things kick back, start slowing down in the business, I ended up working for UPS. And the only reason why I went there was because why not? If I'm not bringing in a whole lot of income, what's the best thing you can do? And that is go somewhere where they'll pay you a little something, but you also get benefits where I'm not paying my benefits. Somebody else is paying them. So I said, bet. So that's what I started doing. So then it got to the point to where things started picking it back up right around late 2009, 2010, and so on and so forth again. And so now I am doing UPS early in the morning, getting off right around 8, 9 o'clock. And then I'm hopping in my van with the ladders and everything on it. And then I'm leaving there to go out and go do jobs. And that's how we survive. That's how the Lord, really blessed us, and yes, my wife was working and, still, when she wasn't in San Diego at this time, now by this time she had moved to a place closer to home, and things were going good. And the Lord just saw fit and continued blessing us in the midst of, our struggles. But our struggles weren't over. So there's a lot of things that you have to deal with in that environment when you're a renter. And going from having to not having, sometimes it messes with your mind internally. And truthfully, it also messes with your spirit. Because I was very, if you want to call it angry, I was angry. I was upset, pretty despondent, and but still trying to hold it together. Because after all, we men were told to hold it together, Do not show any emotion. Hold it together. Be strong. Don't be a punk. Hold it together. Somebody's counting on you. Hold it together. But my question is, when you're going through, who do we men go to? Who can we talk to? Because a lot of times we don't talk to people because we're in fear of how we are perceived, how we're felt, how things are taken when we try to share our hearts. Because the last thing we want to be told is, as we're sharing, is you're weak, you're a punk. So it's like, who do we go to? So 9 times out of 10, we don't go to anybody. We won't talk to anybody. We hold it all in. When we see the boys, we get into dap. Man, what's up? What's up? What's good? You know, everything's going good, blah, blah, blah. You know, and we really don't get a chance to tell our truths, because the last thing we want to be seen is to feel inferior in front of our boys. Yeah, I said it. That's the last thing we want to do, is feel inferior in front of our boys. And I was going through a moment. And it wasn't just a moment. It was a long time of controversy. And it was a struggle. But in the midst of my struggle, I still see God's hand doing things. So in this one home, we were there roughly 4 to 5 years. And the next thing you know, we get ready to leave that home. And then God shows up in our next home. And we move to a place by a lake. And he shows his hand, and things are going well. You know, more things are being bought financially. Again, we're going to talk about naturally. We're seeing things being bought financially, you know, other cars and this, that, and the other. Seeing our children progress in what they're doing. But sometimes, because you don't heal from what was, you mishandle your blessing. And that was me. I mishandled the blessing. I became unappreciative of the struggle. And in this unappreciation, caused me to act a certain way that became very unseemly for me. I remember one time, because of, again, hurts and because of different pain, because of a feeling of inadequacy, sometimes we men were so busy trying to make sure, you know, as the saying go, happy wife, happy life, that sometimes in that happy wife, happy life, that we're so busy trying to make them happy that we tend to sometimes lose ourselves in the process. And sometimes we feel that maybe it's not reciprocated. You know, that there's no appreciation. Now, I was there too. So I was in that lack of appreciation mode. I was in that I've lost a whole lot. I've put a whole lot into something. I've lost it. It's been taken from me. It's been removed from me. And I don't know how to get it back. I'm struggling how to get me back. I'm struggling how to talk with anybody, because after all, in the midst of my struggle, I'm trying to figure out who can I talk to that I can trust and lean on, to know that when I talk to them, when I begin to share my heart, that it stays with them. And it doesn't end up in the weeds. It doesn't end up via cell phone. It doesn't end up, you know, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. It doesn't end up on YouTube. Who can I talk to? Because after all, women have all kinds of places they can go to. But men, we're not taught to share. We're not taught to be transparent. We're not taught to build each other up. We're not taught to hold each other's hand, hold each other up. We're just taught to be the protector. We're just taught to be strong. We're taught to just hang in there in spite of it all. And honestly, truthfully, I was bitter, broken, upset, felt devoured, invaluable, left alone, sometimes ignored. And I finally told my wife, I think it's time for me to leave.